Hello, I'm Chris Flisher, and welcome to Turning of the Wheel, an intelligent, lively discussion on astrology, art, and adventure. Timing is everything, and as the great wheel turns, we are best prepared when we are best informed. Join me as I explore the current planetary alignments and offer insights for coping with change. Educational, informative, enlightening, the Turning of the Wheel is a welcome pause in your daily swirl of constant change. Through intelligent discourse, inspired guests, and educational segments, I will help to enlighten your knowledge of astrology and guide you to accept change as the great wheel of life turns. Call in with your questions and speak with some of the greatest visionaries in the time-tested practice of astrology. Turning of the Wheel, Astrology, Art, and Adventure with Chris Flisher, each week on Turning of the Wheel podcast. Hello and welcome to Turning of the Wheel. My name is Chris Flisher. As you know, this is a show about astrology. And I recently came back from the United Astrology Conference in Chicago. And I had the good luck to see my friend Caroline Casey speak again. I've seen her many times speak before, and she's always amazed me. And we bumped shoulders, and we're going to talk about an interesting topic today, which has to do with LSD and astrology. So welcome to the show, Caroline. Great to have you on.
Wonderful. Yes.
So this is an interesting and ominous topic. I mean, this is something that, and the reason I started thinking about it, I think you as well. There's a new book out now by Michael Pollan who's talked about this very subject. I saw him on Bill Maher just the other night talking about this, and I've heard many radio interviews about him as well. And he is talking about it in a whole new light as a way of helping people to become more complete in themselves. And I'm curious how you approach this through the eyes of an astrologer.
Well, definitely. So we know with the heartbreaking horror on the border and the cruelty and churlishness in the world. So I want to let's talk about all entheogens. I like to say entheo, endogenous indigenuity.
Wow.
It's fun, and I get audiences to chant that.
That's a Casey classic.
Entheo, endogenous indigenuity. Entheo, that which opens our hearts. Endogenous is a wonderful word. It means we have receptors, right? So we know we humans have cannabis receptors. It's a very long relationship. Like, hello. Mm-hmm. We know that all mammals have DMT receptors, the active principle in ayahuasca. And I like to think we also have endogenous astrology and mythology receptors. It's endogenous to us. So, again, your dedicated listening audience, regardless of how much or how little they know about astrology, when we speak of the planets, it quickens the endogenous inner planet within everyone. Oh, there we go. So part of my, and then indigenuity is what we need. Again, a culture, a renaissance of reverent indigenuity rising from this rubble of churlish horror. So I'm looking particularly at the big, planetary movements and Jupiter trining Neptune. The way I think about it is that Neptune in its home realm of Pisces. And I think of all the critters on the planet meeting backstage saying, what are we going to do about the humans, this rogue species and its war on life, relentless in so many forms? We have to either kill them or heal them. Let's try healing them first. Let's make every plant, every sacrament, every piece of music or poetry or mythology or spiritual teachings that has ever moved humans to kinship, to conscious kinship, available so that humans can re-enter the choreography of creation again. There we go. So, but I also want to say that all of these beautiful patterns, Jupiter trine Neptune says all the beauty, all the spiritual, everything, all the entheogens that ever were or will be are here now. But these patterns are equally available to the Dementors, right? So we do also want to honor the shadow. Yep. Jupiter trine Neptune, just fantastically weird hijacking of strange, distracting conspiracy theories and all kinds of stuff. So it behooves us to animate the desirable, lest we leave it by default to the Dementors. Bless their cuckoo, cruel hearts. May they be redeemed in some future animistic Buddhist cosmology. But so I love looking at the birth of LSD. I want to connect it to, an interesting woman, Mary Meyer, a little bit to Tim Leary, a little bit to extraordinary woman that many people haven't heard of, Dovey Johnson Roundtree. Will weave all these things together, but and Albert Hofmann, of course, the kind of discoverer of LSD, being a Swiss chemist, he kept very detailed notes. So we have the birth of LSD, April 18th, 1943, 4:20 p.m.
What was the year? What year again was that?
1943.
1943. Wow, that's great.
In Basel, Switzerland. So I know that the late great astrological ally Jim Lewis, creator of astrocartography, said, he fudged a little bit, but it's close enough. When LSD was born, Pluto was conjunct the descendant in San Francisco, right? Saying, perhaps it will have an effect in this realm of Northern California. And we go, that's good enough. But I think it's also, part of the dynamic that birth charts of LSD or people respond to transits, to coming alive in different ways.
Yes, they do.
Even after the person is dead. So when we look at the birth chart of LSD, the sun is at 25 plus Aries in the 8th house of kind of ancestral download. And its Sabian symbol, I like those a lot, is, a woman bursting with gifts more than she can hold. That sun at 25 Aries in the 8th house. And along with Ceres Demeter, dwarf planet, right next to Mercury in Taurus, also in the 8th house, trining the moon in Virgo, rising in the east. The tradition of medicine people. So we know from this chart that it was discovered or brought to human consciousness in a pharmaceutical way by this birth chart and Albert Hofmann. But it's an ancestral thing because we know pretty much the Eleusinian mysteries. We know that humans used to gather, at times of personal and cultural crisis, to gather their wits and their guiding vision to be in accord with the larger story. In many ways. And the Eleusinian Mysteries, I'd hosted on my own radio show, Visionary Activist Show on Pacifica, Carl Rook, who's a great Eleusinian Mystery scholar, and wrote a great book on the road to Eleusis. And a couple of things. One is, he said, there are so many ways of telling all the mythological stories, and we want to be creatively suspicious. And excavate. So the tale of Pluto and Persephone, he says, many ways to tell that story. And the rape and kidnapping, pertinent to us now, the kidnapping of daughters.
Right, very much so.
Yeah, but it's a way late version. And he says in one of the earliest versions told by Plato, the Pluto character is not a guy kidnapping a woman. The Pluto character is called Pharmacia. Plant medicines.
Wow.
It's plant medicines that take us to the underworld of initiation. And he says also we know some things about the Eleusinian mysteries, that people would gather, they would walk all night to Eleusis, and then they would drink this brew, this entheogenic brew, which was basically LSD. It was a kind of refinement to get some of the more toxic elements out. They would drink this LSD brew, and there's lots of little purple mushrooms also all over. Maybe it might have been an LSD, psilocybe mushroom brew. They dance all night, drink this thing, and then in the morning, everyone had a life-changing personal vision that they weren't supposed to speak about, but everyone had a collective vision in which they saw Persephone emerging from the underworld as a fully initiated queen. Right?
Wow.
So these, and that's kind of contained in the birth of LSD, these planets in the 8th house of ancestral download, for kinship with the earth, part of a long tradition, that wants to rise back up, and it's all coming alive right now. And one of the things, I know Michael Pollan a little bit, and I heard him speak here in D.C., and I'm grateful for his work and the popularizing and calming down of people's fears about entheogens. And on Bill Maher, he was asked about microdosing, and he had some quip going, I just think it's kind of using this big thing for a small tool.
Right.
Right, but I think he's always been a little ahead of himself, going, take a little more, Michael, because it is a Moon Virgo rising chart, which says, dosage, micro dosage, homeopathic dosage, I think is quite interesting.
Yeah.
And we have Saturn stationing at 9 degrees Capricorn, exactly trining the birth of LSD, Moon in Virgo, kind of micro-dosing, doesn't take much. And I don't know, have you microdosed with LSD?
I have not microdosed. I have dosed. I have not microdosed.
Exactly. Well,
but what's interesting about this, though, is that when you mentioned this really seems to be in keeping with the time, especially given the arrival or the supposed arrival of the divine feminine. Because without going deeper into ourselves and discovering who we are, we're not ever going to arrive at that. We're too superficial in our lives right now. Is that what you're sort of at the underpinnings of this?
Maybe.
Okay.
But I think the muscles that have atrophied in our species are about kinship. And the minute I heard about entheogens in 8th grade, I was like, I must find this. And I remember precociously entheogenically enthused, and I remember reading in 8th grade the Life magazine article on LSD saying it doesn't change you because after you take it, it's not you anymore. And part of me was like, I must find this immediately, because if the reality police, which was a concept I had even then, is saying this about it, it must be dangerous to the reality police.
Right.
And I go,
exactly.
I must find this. And I did. So it took a little while, but and then just for the fun of it, the microdosing, I know people who do it every day, or I've heard of such people who do it every day, and I go, ooh, gee, okay, interesting. And I ran across somebody who said, yes, I can turn you onto this. And I think with everything, we're all in this experimental realm. So at first, and again, just 10 micrograms, maybe 2 drops, 20 micrograms. And at first it was exactly what I wanted. It was just a little edge of increased pattern perception, going, oh, this is great. Remember, it was, Crick and Watson, who won the Nobel Prize for their work on DNA. I keep confusing them. One of them was really straight, but one of them took a fair amount of LSD, and it was on LSD that he saw the entwined serpents of DNA.
Oh my gosh!
And he said it's not a whatever it is. It's not a mystical thing. It's a thinking tool, and it's like, oh, whatever you need to tell yourself, you little British scientist guy. So that was good, and I was kind of conversing with people, and then I thought, no, I want to go home to write mythological code. A lot of people, and what Michael Pollan was referring to is the fashion almost over in Silicon Valley of people, writing code on microdoses of LSD.
Right.
But this also has been a very long tradition of years ago, the Botanical Preservation Corps, which is still active, I think, and had a fantastic catalog of legal psychoactive and healing plants from around the world, taken respectively from shaman gardens. And they had a gathering in Veracruz where a number of us went, including Terence McKenna and a lot of very cool people. And there were a lot of Silicon Valley people there at that time. This is back in the 90s, early 90s, right? Yeah. And one thing is I said to a traveling companion, boy, what a great group. There's no tyrannical dingbat here. And he said, well, that's because most of them are gardeners or writers of code. And every single Silicon Valley person there had their own unique formula for writing code, right? They go, I like 2 drops of LSD and 1 drop of MDMA, and I like a little bit of mushrooms added. And I mean, they were playing with it, right? So that's a medium, not an ancient tradition, but all these are kind of hearkening back. And
is it for a search for greater consciousness? Do you think it's trying to find our greater purpose, our greater core? I mean, there's got to be some. I mean, I know they were doing it to create interesting code and be, wild in that regard. But on a greater global conscious level, do you think it's doing that for us? Does it have the potential for that?
Yeah. I do. Well, I want to bring in Paul Stamets, great mycological ally as well. And he says he thinks that the mushroom, the fungi, the mycelia, the underworld roots of the mushroom, created the internet to help save the world.
I
So,
love that.
so at that time, the Silicon Valley people that we were meeting with in the jungle, they wanted to write code. They weren't Bill Gates kind of people. I mean, they were equal with Bill Gates, but they wanted to write code that would tie the Earth community together. There was a larger purpose to that dynamic, and I've subsequently I don't do LSD microdosing a lot. I have it as a little respectful thing going, I've learned a couple
In case of
things.
emergency.
Right. Well, yeah. Or in case of, in case of not having drunk coffee for quite a while, because I learned that it's a very bad mix. I learned the hard way going, whoa, because at first I was enthused going, and let's microdose before we go to a keto class. Okay. Not bad. Let's microdose on the, going to go give a talk, and I grab an espresso on the way out as well. And we go, whoa. And the talk, I listened to it later. I had a pretty good time giving the talk, but it wasn't quite as good as I thought it was, right? And I go, and then I was also emceeing a stage at the eclipse last August.
Oh yeah,
August 21st eclipse. And I thought, oh, okay, a little microdosing for the eclipse because I've often megadosed for eclipses before. Always a good idea. And that was okay. But when I got back to the stage I was emceeing, the stage director said, the next two acts didn't show up. Go out and fill 40 minutes. And on the microdose, that was not a comfortable thing. I'm just passing this on. It was like, because I wanted to be inward. I wanted to be inward. So
and you were forced to be outward.
Right.
Yeah,
And it was like,
that's quite a conundrum.
Okay, all right, we're learning along the way. But I also then want to bring in the psilocybe mushroom part of this as well. And Stamets talking about that. He gave a great talk at that festival, and many people might know his really worthy work. But in keeping with Michael Pollan and all of us in this cultural realm of anything that can help heal human kinship and perception of pattern, right? And that's where the LSD comes in. I don't know that LSD by itself it expands kinship. I'm just going to park that to one side. But what Stamets was saying is the studies at Johns Hopkins being conducted on psilocybe mushrooms, magic mushrooms, and in keeping with tradition, say what are things that are now known is that also microdosing of psilocybe mushrooms very much kinder. You can drink coffee or anything, it's a much more kin kind of ally. You could probably go on stage and be fine. But
I'll keep that in mind.
Keep that in mind, right? The psilocybe mushrooms calm down the amygdala portion of the human brain, which is our scanning for threat part, the most easily manipulated by fearmongers part. So it calms that down, increases cooperation among the other regions of the brain, and increases confidence and kindness.
Wow.
Yeah, and as Stamets says, those are leadership qualities that we sorely need: confidence and kindness.
That's great. Do you think that the Earth, the planet, I know you've got a very holistic view about the world and everything. Do you think that the Earth provided this in some capacity? Because when you look at something like ayahuasca, it's a very bizarre formula.
Yeah.
That you don't just go out and whip up and say, let's drink this down the hatch and see what happens. Somebody had to figure this out, or maybe perhaps the Earth told us this was a formula. That's what I've heard from people who've been in the Amazon say, yes, it was just part of the natural education. Everybody knew about this. The Earth told them how to do this. Does that make sense to you? I mean,
yeah, well, I think the larger frame that we're all in right now, the Uranus trickster, nature's evolutionary trickster genius in Taurus, trining Saturn, wants to be an animistic renaissance, rising of biomimicry and humans humbly cooperating with nature's guiding genius. So, Jeremy Narby, British botanist who wrote a book, The Cosmic Serpent, DNA and the Origins of Consciousness, went to the Amazon, and he said, how do you know what the plants do? And how did you know to put this formula together? And the indigenous people there said, the plants tell us, you silly British scientist. And they said there are two plants all the plants have a conversation, and that's a lot what these entheogens open up, conversations, and in which there are also larger forces than ourselves that make their appearance, possibly.
Right.
They told Jeremy Narby there are two plants that are library plants that know what all the other plants do, and that's ayahuasca, the ayahuasca vine, and tobacco.
Interesting. Wow.
Right. And see, tobacco was God El, a really big deal in the Mayan cosmology. It's not the same tobacco now. It was much higher nicotine and much more kind of psychoactive and meant for reflective meditation. But so this call and response, yeah, but it is a great mystery, having been an entheogenic enthusiast for many things, including, ibogaine at one point, which is a really amazing African root. And you do wonder, like, who was the first person who took this? Because you might think you were dying, right? If you hadn't, these are all mysteries. Nonetheless, it's all available. And as I was doing it at the United Astrology Congress, where we were coinciding, I've been enthused to mention this in many talks to conventional and non-conventional audiences, saying even just hearing the word, right, is good. Even just invoking, LSD, or invoking the positive aspects of the mushrooms, the psilocybe mushrooms, and here's a little micro homeopathic dose to everybody. Wah! May it calm, a wish for the world.
Yeah.
May all humans' amygdala calm right down. May they only be alarmed by real threats and not distracted by toxic, mimic, false threats. Increase the cooperations of our personal brains, increase the cooperation of our collective human brain, right? And increase confidence and kindness. May that be so for everybody listening now, whether you eat the thing or just think about the thing. Wah! Right? These are qualities that we really need.
We need them so desperately, and yet, and that's what's so cool about the timing of this all, because I think there's no greater time than now that we would use this. This is the time that we could all actually benefit from this in some capacity. I mean, who doesn't need more confidence and kindness? We are in a fractious world. This would be a wonderful antidote.
Right, and then the reason I want to bring up Tim Larry, Mary Meyer, John F. Kennedy, and LSD for now. So John F. Kennedy was the only other Gemini president we've had, aside from our current Dementor, Trumpelstiltskin. And Mary Meyer is a completely intriguing person. She was John F. Kennedy's really only equal, deeply cultivated lover. I'm inextricably intertwined with her story in some way, and we're born on the same day, different year.
Wow.
So I'd always been interested in her. And we know for sure that she smoked marijuana with JFK in the White House. And we know almost for sure that through Tim Leary, she and John F. Kennedy Jr. Did a small 100 microgram LSD trip in the White House, following which, the week after that, John F. Kennedy gave an amazing speech at American University, and I invite everybody to Google it, and it's easy to find, and there's a wonderful, actual, ancient video of him. It's a powerful speech, and it's all about kinship, and all about composting the idea of an enemy. Because one of the things I'm enthused at, for self and for others, for our micro selves and our larger selves is, humans, can we throw into the cauldron of now the addiction to having an enemy? Whoa. And that's what JFK, after his it wasn't really a microdose, right. It was a full-on dose of LSD. The speech is amazing, and it's about compassion and empathy for the Russian people who have suffered so much. It was such a great speech that Khrushchev played it throughout Russia. He talked about, peace and retiring the aspects of war. It might have sealed his death, but it was very, very powerful.
How would it have sealed his death? Because he was preaching getting along, and that's just not what people want.
Right. He was preaching getting out of Vietnam. He was preaching, a de-escalating of the military. The military was vociferously objecting to his speech and his direction, so we just put it over to one side, going right. Might have sealed his death because he was coming up against big financial and military forces and saying, we want a different direction. We want a peace based on empathy and kinship, right? I mean,
Right.
he
Yeah.
used these words, right? So we want to call this forth right now because we have the demonic opposite going on at the moment. This lack of kinship, this lack of empathy, this
Lack of kindness.
the lack of kindness. The not only separating mothers and fathers from their children, but the latest also. It's relentless. The U.S. Dementors took 10 newborn babies away from their mothers, from their nursing mothers, and you just go, oh,
Yes,
this is like the lowest.
It's beyond belief. It's really beyond belief.
And everything we can do, and again, against all odds are the odds that the trickster being born in all of our hearts really likes. So when the conventional press says, there's no Saturn structure of responsible restoring of these children and these babies to their parents, we go, that is one likely truth, but we will not let that be. We're issuing a yellow amber alert across the nation going, orange-haired crazy man in a clown suit has kidnapped 2,500 babies and children, and we will not rest until every one of them is restored no matter what. And there is a rising of great goodness.
Oh, there is. It's a catalyst. It's a catalyst in a very unfortunate way, but it's a catalyst.
Yes. So I also like to, there's Mary Meyer. There's a fantastically useful book called Mary's Mosaic by Peter Janney. It really gives a useful inside story. He's careful to separate his speculation about who killed JFK, and then Mary Meyer was also murdered 6 months later.
Was she murdered? Was that under suspicious? Was that suspicious?
No, she's for sure murdered.
Okay.
In a fashionable section of Washington D.C., and it looks very sketchy, and there are implications that the CIA might have done such a thing, which is why her family will not read this book because it's a completely interesting book. You don't have to go that way, although it's likely. But she was murdered absolutely, and that's also just a sidebar to we want all the help we can get. At that time, there was a very simple kind of homeless black guy who was accused of the murder. Why? And so everything, we're in, early 1960s Washington, D.C., and the CIA and the police and everybody wanted this case of Mary Meyer's murder wrapped up. She had a lot of objection. She wanted to talk to Bobby Kennedy. They had plans to talk about the assassination of JFK once he was elected, right? So, there are whole dinner parties that take place in which you realize within a year all these people were going to be dead.
Wow.
So there's a kind of resonance to that. But anyway, so this hapless black guy was accused, and it was very unlikely that, that he wouldn't take the fall. But, when we were at UAC, I pulled up the newspaper, everything's speaking to us, and, it was Wednesday, May 23rd. And on top was, a horrible picture of Trumpelstiltskin looking, like a demented who he is. And then I go, oh, phew. And then I flipped to below the fold, and there it was, defense lawyer, civil rights warrior, lived to be 101, W. Johnson Roundtree. And she was the black guy's lawyer. I have her chart here.
Interesting. Wow.
She's born, within a day of LSD, right? She's born April 17th, 1914. Her sun in Aries is 26 plus Aries, is through imagination, lost opportunities are regained. And her chart is all very active right now, too. And in the book, Mary's Mosaic by Peter Janney, one of the most riveting, extraordinary, compelling, can't put it down chapters is on this legal thing in which W. Johnson Roundtree, with everything lined up against her, and we can tease this into pertinence to now, she is victorious and gets this black guy off. just through just
Wow.
amazing, whatever. And so I just want to do a shout out to W. Johnson Roundtree, to Mary Meyer, to that quality of against all odds, the triumph of justice. But so the case is unsolved. However, when Mary Meyer was born, she who had a lot to say, and Pluto is squaring her son, my son too, because we're born on the same day. And so, reports from the underworld. And her Mercury was 13 plus Scorpio. And Jupiter right now is stationing at 13 plus Scorpio.
Right.
It will go direct on July 10th in a few days at 13 plus Scorpio. A degree, I think, see, whatever language we cultivate, any of us, is how synchronicity will speak to us. So I have certain degrees that I really love, right? And 13 plus Scorpio is one of them because it's Edward Snowden's moon, because we have his birth time, because South Carolina lists that available. And the Sabian symbol, first think Edward Snowden, then think Mary Meyer, then think all of us. The stationing degree being pretty important. Its image is telephone lineman at work installing links to other realities, the cosmic switchboard.
My gosh, wow.
Isn't that great for Edward Snowden?
Unbelievable.
Good job, lad.
Just perfect.
But it's also Mary Meyer's Mercury, and as we've mentioned, people's charts respond to transits even after they're dead. It's a source.
So hers is being revived. It's essentially what's
right. Well, she's got a lot to say.
Got a lot
or
continues to speak.
And so does Edward Snowden, still breathing, thank goodness. And we go, oh, right. But these stations where planets appear to stand still and change direction, especially from retrograde inward to outward, are thresholds, and it's where the backstage divine really wants our attention. So it says, everybody, think of this powerful moment. Jupiter, the power of blessing and the power of storytelling in Scorpio, that which is hidden. We go, what would we like revealed? And what dark things would we like revealed, rendered harmless, and in the fullness of time, an occasion for mirth slowly? But what do we all need to know? And everybody listening, again, it says, where are we available to be a voice for something that's been hidden that really we must know?
Yeah, we will know. This is the manifestation. It will arrive, I believe. I firmly believe that we're going to find out.
Of what?
We're going to find out what's being hidden. We're going to find there's going to be a revelation, I believe. Perhaps this eclipse coming up in July will open the doors to that and allow us to see what is actually going on behind. Maybe Mueller is behind it all. Maybe he will find out the answers we're all looking for.
Right, or Michael Avenatti. Yes, Michael Avenatti, Stormy Daniels' lawyer, who looks to me like a fawn in Narnia mated with a hyena. And I go. And people go, oh, he's a showman. I go, yeah, he is. I think that's great. He's a very competent showman. And a revealer as well, and an Aquarius person.
And he's very tenacious, and I love that.
He is, and he's now working for pro bono to help with many other lawyers, all these people on the border. And we go, again, the team of eccentric, differently talented, who brought what, and that's for everybody, who brought what to this thing. And we need everything. So it's like, LSD, microdosing, Michael Avenatti, cryptocurrency, somehow we can tie it all together.
Michael Cohen, we can figure it all out. Yeah, it's all hidden behind the grand curtain.
Right. Well, yes. And, Michael Cohen, I happen to have his chart here. Wait, I'm just reaching around for the thing. I think it's important. Whoops, I'm coming back in a moment. There we go. All right, so it's important for all of us astrologers also, because astrologers are often like, oh, a grand trine, how wonderful. We go, yeah,
not necessarily.
It's like greased lightning, so Michael Cohen has Uranus in the sky forming a grand trine to his sun in Virgo and his moon in Capricorn, and I just remember from years ago, a wonderful astrological colleague, my ally, Sylvia Hanley, way back in the OJ time, saying, trines, 120-degree angles that astrologers say, oh, that's so wonderful, it's just greased lightning. Mm-hmm. it operates according to how much we are cultivated. And she said when OJ killed, or his wife or whatever, well, they were having trines, all trines, Neptune trines, Pluto trines, right? And she said, they could have won OJ and Nicole could have won the shallowness sweepstakes, and so you're just possessed by the thing, right? So Michael Cohen with a grand trine in Earth, may well be a redemptive, inadvertent liberator, right? So we go, all right, there you go, lad, and maybe he'll not go to prison. We don't know.
He sings, and he sings loud and clear, hopefully, and of course then that sets the stage for him to be, pardoned. That's the only problem with that. But he is a game changer. He's got something up his sleeve, and I think that, this whole revelation of the idea of our opening up our minds, getting into the amygdala, as you say, and working through confidence and kindness would bring these things to the surface and sort of wipe the slate clean, perhaps.
Sure. Well, we draw on everything. It's like in South Africa, the Truth and Reconciliation Act, all powerful storytelling, which I think this Jupiter stationing in Scorpio, trining Neptune in Pisces is a worthy storytelling, healing experiment. And like in South Africa, they did the deal, kind of like what's happening now with Michael Cohen and others. If you tell the truth, you will be forgiven. Mm-hmm. Right? And it's a worthy cultural experiment. Some people give up sacrifice more in South Africa. I mean, Steve Biko's parents gave up more when the police confessed and told their story of brutally murdering their son, but sacrificed for the greater good. And so in that sense, sure, Michael Cohen, you little scamster, off you go. If this, then this. And I think this is also part of all of our wheel and deal spirituality that wants to come back into play. I give you this, you give me that. It's an ancient form, really going all the way back to the Delphic Oracle and the Eleusinian Mysteries, because we have most of the questions that people asked at the Delphic Oracle, and they weren't fortune-telling questions. They were, are our plans in accord with the larger design of the gods? And if not, what should we do to bring them into accord? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Very sensible.
Yeah.
Very sensible question. And only a couple of times was the Delphic Oracle an increasingly relevant smartass. Right? When the the king of Greece said, "What will happen if I invade Persia, Iran?" And the Delphic Oracle said, "A great empire will fall. It will be yours, you dingbat." I even have that as a bumper sticker. I think I will put on. Right. Anyway, so yes, wheeling us back into now. All right. Wherever you want to go.
Right. Well, the thing is that I think that's fascinating about it is that the timing of what we're talking about here, I think, is pertinent because I think we're at a very critical juncture in history, in the evolution of all of us as a species, but in particular in the United States as well. Obviously, with our Pluto return coming up, we're at a time of enormous change. And what better way to embrace enormous change than to jump into it rather than run and hide from it? So this kind of gives me the idea that we might be best served by this now rather than any other time, because if we are going through this terrible takedown, which it certainly is being a taking down, we could easily see this as an opportunity to, we can let it take us down, or we can use that energy to propel ourselves to a newer, better place. That's how I think of it.
No, I think that's beautiful and true. And if it's not true, let's make it true.
Let's make it true.
The rising up of kinship and embrace, and I think all of us. Right. Kind of, it's like constrict and expand. It's like I was reading, article by Masha Gessen, interesting Russian commentator, and she said, most of Trump's opponents are saying that, they're not certainly supporting open borders. We've got to protect our borders. And she goes, why? And I go, right. I was snookered into of course we want to protect our borders. And I go, no, maybe not. Maybe let's dream big, play fair. Where, why cringe in front of the reality police? Neptune, says dissolution is the secret of the great work, and Uranus says against all odds are the odds that trickster likes. Let's go. And there was a fabulous placard sign in London during the Women's March that said, migration is older than language. We go, right.
It is.
Right. What about the dissolving of all dams and all borders and up until 1970 we had open borders, and it's like Steve Bhaerman has a wonderful quip. He goes, the answer to the drug problem: improve reality.
Improve
We go,
reality.
yes, and that's the answer to all of us being effective storytellers of what's been hidden from mainstream, and the effectiveness of did you know as opposed to ranting opposition.
Well, the whole thing is about real estate. I mean, it's pathetic in that regard because it's every man's planet. This is every person's planet. This belongs to us all. So why do we have these ridiculous rules and borders in the first place?
Right. And also, and I think, did you know, for all of us, did you know how, the Latin American gang that Trump keeps employing was started here in this country, right? And a lot of the trouble in Honduras and Guatemala and the places that people are nobly fleeing at great ardor, to give their kids, this is the best of humans, really. But the U.S. foreign policy, the creating of GMOs and the destruction of indigenous farming practices, and also the exporting of gang members back to Honduras, and I mean, so that is before us to know, so that we can say to people, do you know why these people are leaving? Let's through the Jupiter story, let's expand the sense of kinship, going, oh, because as a skill set in everybody's magic backpack, no one minds being asked, did you know? If we've composted our condescending snark, did you know? Mm-hmm. And as opposed to like, how do we, in our spiraling trickster, way as liberators of everything, engage in conversation in which we don't feed the polarity, which is very challenging now, right? Because there's so much, we have appropriate outrage that's really good, and it's given forth to kind of ranting, which is appropriate, but then we want to Pluto that, we want to cook that and transform that, because we strengthen whatever we oppose. And I did host Gary Lockman on the radio a couple weeks back, really interesting show. He's not a great conversationalist, but he is a great propounder and holder forth. And he's a, one of the founding members of Blondie, but he's a very serious esoteric scholar.
Well, I've had him on my show before. He's written a lot of good books. He's written amazing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And did you get a word in edgewise?
Well, I tried. He's a Gemini, I think.
Right. Well, there you go. But yeah, his latest book is Dark Star Rising. I forgot what I have it right here actually. And it is.
He's done a lot of work working with the occult. He did a lot of work on Madame Blavatsky, and he's really very interesting guy.
Magic and power in the era of Trump, it's important to understand that, like Bannon and these guys are esoterically trained, right? Right. This is not these. They hate truth. They have complete contempt for that which they perceive as weak or financially poor. They don't care about truth. And they love outrage. So when we go, rah, 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 they go, yeah, we love that. So it is demonic.
Do you think it's part of the dualistic role of everybody? I mean, of our lives to see this disparity? I mean, is this sort of a ping pong, plus or minus, black or white, whatever you want, negative, positive energy that has to happen in order for the world to spin? Why do we need this?
Why do we need this?
Why do we need the evil people? Why are they there? I mean, what's their value in being there? Is it just as a counterpoint to goodness and back and forth? The Steve Bannons and the people like that. Why are the Stephen Millers? Why are they out there? Are they there to charge us up? Are they the catalyst for us to move?
Well, let's Neptune that. Let's wonder. We wonder, because I think wonder does attract revelation. Going, we wonder, but it's also I think for all of us, the Jupiter Scorpio trine Neptune, to critique, yes, and then to invite and magnetize the irresistible, all-inclusive story, of humans and animals and critters and plants and all together going, come on over here. And this is a huge opportunity, and at the same time, so many lives and so much anguish and so much cruelty is at risk. And we know that there's a really good book called General Theory of Love by 3 neuroscientists, and what they put out is that as young mammals and infants, the lifetime neurological pathways in our brain are set down when we're children and toddlers, all according to what happens when we call out for help.
Yeah.
How does the environment respond? And if it's loving, good, and if it's not, okay, which is what's happening right now, then it is a lifelong trauma, right? So it is not to say we can't heal this, but we do want to acknowledge the horror of what's being done, and it's all part of a large thing, the relentless drilling of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, which the Gwich'in view as the Great Mother, right? It's the place where all life begins, and this relentless, the Dementor, the dark magic aspect that really wants to attack, women and life and children and nature and birds and complexity, and it's more than economic, it's really perverse. We don't know. We wonder, but nonetheless, our cultivated response that, for our own species evolution is to learn the power, all of our skill set, the power of story, the power of images. And, as I was saying, when we were cahooting at the United Astrology Congress, I do cross borders. I talk to Dementors. I seek to find a common story, sometimes possible. I did go to the Republican Convention, and as mythological press, right? I was reporting as part of Pacifica's team, but doing the mythology of it, and afterwards, I knew the full horror. Like, oh my God! And part of it was we are getting smoked on our strong suit of story and metaphor, right? We let the Dementors take that over, and so it behooves all of us, everybody, listening and cahooting right now, to cultivate story crafting, because he is the toxic mimic Khan, the toxic mimic, and I think there is a great opportunity now, and to avail ourselves of everything, and when we don't know what to do, invite in trickster, like with the Jupiter Scorpio right now.
Right.
Let anything we need to know to have a democracy be revealed. Let's work with this thing. Let's heal because we are humbled as humans are meant to be humbled, going, oh my God, the horror.
Right. And when you think about him when he walked out on stage and he walked out in that bank of fog, I said, oh my God, we are living in a Neptunian bubble here of the highest order, because this is completely Neptunian to be walking out. And then the whole realm of fake news that swirls around this, it's just classic Neptune. Neptune is just raining on our parade, it seems like.
Well, or the toxic mimic, or where we've let Neptune be kidnapped. It's I think a useful thing to embrace and give voice to is that Trump only talks about himself.
Right.
When he talks about rapists, and you go, he is a rapist.
He's a rapist.
When he talks about the election being stolen, he's planning on stealing it.
Right. No collusion. There's collusion.
Right. There's collusion. So whenever he accuses others of what he's doing. Fake news was a meme that we kind of created, and he inhaled that and made it his own brand, right? And that's where the Bannons and the esoteric people are like, yes, embrace your enemy's thing and claim it. And I know pretty sane people and entheogenically enhanced people who were completely snookered by, like Pizzagate and stuff, going, no, good grief, but that's part of our prayer now. May each person be a lucid, not conned into the polarity. I like John Michael Greer, learned Druid, saying, if you want people to get nothing done but conflict and heat, convince them they're on one side of something. You will only get conflict. What two needs is three. Here comes Jupiter, the unifying story. Here we all are. We're in this thing together, and how should we decide?
It's sort of based on a reality TV structure, a foundation of reality TV. That's what the whole basis of this. And we know that reality TV is not real. So that in itself is just setting the stage for this whole charade.
Yeah. Well, again, we're tracking everything back to its liberating spark before it got bamboozled, and that's part of why I love etymology, looking words up in a good dictionary. So it was Robert Hand, actually, years ago, who said the word illusion comes from in ludo, which means in the game, and delusion, de ludo, means out of the game. So Neptune is a part of us that knows that, all science is metaphoric. All of this is metaphoric. It's an in ludo. We use metaphors until they're no longer useful, and then we come up with other ones. Delusion, deludo, out of the game. Is what the toxic mimic con people are, and I think for our strategy, rather than getting snookered, it's like, so the Dementors have been inviting the worst of humans into play, so it behooves us to invite the best.
Right. So that's what I'm talking about, the duality. There seems to be this duality, this gigantic universal ping pong game of good versus evil, back and forth and back and forth. One precipitates the other and then goes back again. I wonder if this is part of the great cycle of life. I mean, it just seems that is the case.
Or the great cycle of snookering. That we might want to spiral out of this polarity, because we know that tyranny always needs an enemy. Putin loves enemy. Trump loves enemy. But it goes way back, even the mythologies in which we are heretical. We love heresy because it meant free thinker, and it was a term of praise before it could get you killed. All the way back to any of those dualistic mythologies that we might have needed for a while, but now we want to spiral and graduate out of, wherever this, us versus them, we know that the Mossad in Israel created Hamas, literally. They dragged the blind sheik out of prison and funded him as a foil for Arafat, and then were surprised and maybe delighted that it came alive. And so that opposition, we are in a shadow dance with anything we view as an enemy. So it's very challenging now with the Dementors, right? At this moment, in public discourse and in personal discourse, to take our appropriate outrage, but then to cook it, right, so that we're not snookered into feeding conflict, but we, that sane reverence, assume cultural narrative lead. Let's go this way.
Let's go this way, yeah. Which sort of brings us back to an alternate way of looking at reality, perhaps, which might very well bring back the idea of the LSD introduction. Or this, the thing about Michael Pollan, what he says is that he did this in a very sort of, laboratory setting where he was safe, and he had escape routes if people are worried about this. And I'm not condoning it, although I think it's a great idea myself. It does make you wonder if this would be a antidote to where we are, if it does change people, especially if it builds confidence and kindness. I mean, what could be better than that?
Well, I think that's why, he's part of, I think the plants want to heal us.
I think they do too. And I think they have knowledge and wisdom, and they are going to pass it on to us in some way. As bizarre as that may sound to some, I know it doesn't sound bizarre to you, nor to myself, but I think that there's great wisdom in that, and great truth, and great potential.
Well, it's also, because I do love entheogens so much, and there was a kind of sketchy journeying group near me, but they had really good sacraments. So, but then I would go back to my little house, and for 19 years I lived with an actual coyote, Stella coyote, and I know that when I would come back with this interesting mix of MDMA and mushrooms, which was, it's a great mix. It's a great mix. But when I would enter the house, Stella coyote would go, "Now you're in my world. Let's go for a walk at 2 a.m. Because, it's rejoining, and with increasing respect for the incredible intelligence of trees and plants and animals, which is rising up to humble us. So many of the, the guests that I've, and you, that we interview, have solutions. And did you know, I love, name escapes me at the moment, but a great botanist, who said he can walk around anybody's house and look at the weeds growing outside and diagnose the illness of the people inside, because the plants are showing up to heal them, right? And in that sense, the entheogens are showing up to heal us as well. But he also said, Stephen Buhner is his name, and he also said, trees, incredibly, just a humbling intelligence, very pertinent to us now. If trees are being eaten by a beetle, they'll put up with it for a certain point until it crosses a Saturn boundary of dangerous, and then it will manufacture pheromones that attract the predator of that specific beetle. And meanwhile, it will put out a public service announcement to other trees going, "Rude beetle's coming, manufacture this thing now." Right? And we know also that trees have a deep root underworld, conversation with each other, and that there's altruism, that the mother tree will protect and nourish and make room for the baby trees, and yes, all of this. And we go right, and this is all pertinent now that we humans join back into collaboration with the trees, with everything that we love.
Right. Bring us back, getting back as closer to that, to our natural core, I think. Well, just fascinating stuff to think about. I mean, there's so much here to unpack. We have no more time, unfortunately, but there's so much to unpack in all what you say, and the logic and interconnectedness of all these things is just phenomenal. My guest today has been Caroline Casey, the one and only. Her website is Coyote Network News, one long string of words, and .com, thank you. Just www.coyotenetworknews.com. Just a wonderful vessel of knowledge, enthusiasm, optimism. I just think you're fantastic. I love the work that you're doing, and I love the phrase in your thing. It says, "Better a trickster than a martyr be." I think that's just
absolutely great. Yeah, no, a delight, and I'm glad it's the confluencing of allies, and we are allies.
And I'm going to read. I'm going to look into Mary Mosaic. I'm going to try to figure that out and read that and see what it's all about. But I do appreciate you taking the time to come on today. You're the kind of person who I just need to let run, and because you've got so much coming out, it's best to let you just run, and that's exactly what I wanted to do. And I'm so happy you were able to come on today. Great pleasure, Caroline, and I always love your work. And I will do everything I can to support you.
And good luck to all of us.
Well, good luck to all of us. And this will be airing on July the 6th. And thanks so much.
Woof.
Woof.
What is your destiny? Where are you going? What is your real purpose? Do you know? Do you want to know? Of course you do. It's your duty to yourself. We are all here for a reason, and we all have great potential. Discover all of this and more with a professional astrology reading. My name is Chris Flisher, and I can help you. Discover your strengths and work on your weaknesses, and live your life to its fullest capacity. Based on your birthday, birthplace, and birth time, an authentic astrology reading will allow you to live your life to the fullest and reveal your true purpose. Only real astrology can give you real information. It is your destiny, and it is your path. Write me at chris@chrisflisher.com and book a reading today, or call me at 978-393-1036. That's 978-393-1036. www.chrisflisher.com.
Astrology is the science of spirit, and it can serve as an invaluable aid in making the difficult choices in life and seeking truth in all the directions we choose. It holds the potential to allow each of us to evolve to our highest potential. It is the logic of the universe, the code of existence, and the pathway to true wisdom. It is our duty to draw from it the instructions for our lives and to live them to our fullest potential. As the great wheel turns, we are best prepared when we are best informed.
Hi, your host, Chris Flisher here. I've been producer and host of this podcast and radio show for the past 10 years. My goal has always been to provide enlightening, progressive, and logical discussions about where we are as a species and how we move ourselves further down the road towards our greater potential. I believe astrology provides a great tool for observing our progress and awakening our consciousness to becoming a whole, better, and more complete individuals. I have sought to invite the best contemporary guests, thought leaders, and progressive minds to discuss topics that concern us all, regardless of your beliefs. Consider making a contribution through PayPal to help keep the great wheel turning so that I can continue for the next 10 years along the same enlightened path. As always, I thank you for your support. You've been listening to Turning of the Wheel with your host, Chris Flisher. To schedule a reading with me or to order artwork, you may visit my website at www.turningofthewheel.com. That's www.turningofthewheel.com. Or you can call me at 978-393-1036. Thank you. And as always, be open to possibilities.